Typically on Friday evening, from 5 o'clock to 6:30, we have a guest speaker, and we invite all sorts of interesting folks in from business and from government and from other walks of life to talk about some aspect of the world that connects to this notion of managing for sustainability. So they may be talking about an environmental or a social issue. They may be talking about the practices of the company where they work. They may be talking about public policy. And just to sort of give you an idea of some of the other people who've spoken here in the past, we've had Jeb Spalding, who's the Vermont State Treasurer. We've had James Kunstler, who's written a number of books about peak oil. We've had Alex Wilson, the founder of Building Green, which is a green architectural design firm here in town. And so tonight I have the great pleasure of welcoming someone who I will let introduce themselves. I won't really say much biographically about this person, but we're very happy to have him here. It was actually through I think one of the students, right, that Cheryl Egan, who we came into contact with, and really without further ado, I would like to welcome Gregor Barnum, who is the Director of Corporate Consciousness for Seventh Generation, based in Burlington. So anyway, Gregor, welcome.
So let me just, what I usually like to do with these things is not just have me up here yakking off, because I can keep going with lots of different things. And what I'd like to do is begin to create the space out of which we actually do some work together. Because ultimately, in the spirit that I live in, it's always how do you begin to develop the frameworks in the people around you that you actually need to actually understand on the practical level what sustainability is. Because at this point, I don't know what it is. And at some point, we'll get to what that is and begin to think about it from many different perspectives. So in light of Hamlet's great saying to his mother, be cruel, only be kind. So don't let me get away with anything, and just, let's open it up to any kind of dialogue we can get to. So karmically, let me give you a sense of who I am and where I come from. It's sort of an odd story, and it's kind of brief, but it will kind of give you a sense of why I'm here like I am. I was born into a family. My grandfather's name was Walter Rockwell, and he developed a company called Rockwell International. Now, Rockwell was more well known back in the late 60s when they bought North American Aviation and became heavily into the Vietnam War. So they were both building Apollo and building airplanes that were killing people in Vietnam. I was, at that point, a member of the SDS. So there was an interesting tension. So the SDS were the Students for the Democratic Society. We were a fairly liberally, radically based group who used the F word a lot in trying to think of how do you disassemble people's thinking. And we spent a fair amount of time trying to disassemble because the structure seemed very tight, and there was just a lot of fun thinking about how do you disassemble what you do. And there was an interesting part of it because I also felt this odd agony for being in a family where we actually were responsible for things like killing people somewhere. And at the age of 17, I didn't know what to do with it. I mean, it was so whacked out in my head. So from there, sort of in the light of having been brought up with a lot of money and got all the best schooling and all that crap, and decided not to go off to the Ivy world, and said I'd blow all this off because it was just too whack to think to go into the system that just didn't seem to nurture life. And I mean, I didn't know what to do with it. I just didn't know what to do with it from that standpoint. I did go into analysis, which was an interesting part of that whole thing. And I did go off to Hampshire College, which had just opened up, to begin to think about, well, one of the things we got to do is the academy has got to play a role in how do we begin to think about the future. And that's still a question right now because the academy still is teaching medieval kinds of stuff. It doesn't really yet create the ground out of which a lot of strong new frameworks can begin to find form. From there, I actually went back to school. I mean, was at Hampshire, eventually went on to the graduate program and became what was called a Reichian analyst. Rarely do people know who Wilhelm Reich once was. Do people know Wilhelm Reich? So Reich was kind of a freaky dude, and basically it was kind of upsetting from the standpoint, but the same theme was there. So the red thread was Reich went in and disrupted. That was what he did. You have to break down the muscular armor. You have to get beyond the armor. And that's basically what I kept hearing in society. There's a sociological armor. How do you make a crack into the armor? And the machine of the armor is getting better and better, as you can begin to hear in the pulse of society right now. You know, thank God that there's a disruption right now. Nobody knows what to do with it. Nobody has the framework yet to know what to do with it. And the machine is working radically to, in some ways, come in. It's prime time for machine thinking. And the other part of this is that so we'll get to this eventually, I hope. How do we begin to create the frameworks that I think are probably living in you all that actually have sustainability? And I'm going to define sustainability in how I'm seeing it in a moment. But really have, and I'm going to define it from Buckminster Fuller's idea rather than from present ideas. Bucky really looked at it from the standpoint of a design question. You know, how do you really design for the well-being of everybody on the earth? That, to me, is how I think about sustainability. So, and I'll come back to that. So, having spent 15 years working with people in Reichian work and really hitting the unethic of that world, I could not understand how it is somebody's going to pay me to come in for an hour and have me disrupt them and have them go back on the street. And there was an unethic in me at that point of not knowing what to do with that. At that point in 1985, Rockwell was actually caught for the second worst environmental incident compared to the ExxonMobil incident. They made atomic bombs and they were dumping nuclear waste into the Nevada flats. And I still had family on the board, and these people were not taking responsibility for their activities. And the question that comes at this point was, it's not that they were bad, it's just they didn't have the frameworks. I'm trying to get out of this idea that, and we can wrestle with what evil is, but these were not, these were just people who didn't have the frameworks to know how business and sustainability, whatever that means, could find some presence in the world. At that point, I actually, for whatever reason, met up with a guy who actually worked with Bucky Fuller for a number of years. And the interesting thing I had a vision of wanting to create in the world that business actually developed the frameworks to actually take on environment. And Bucky had spent a whole lot of worlds doing that. And this guy, Howard Brown, had worked with Bucky for a number of years on how do you begin to develop the thinking of how do you go not to the back end, but you go to the front. How do you get design into the everyday, and how do you get environmental design into the everyday? And in a sense, how do you get environment out of an EMS system, which is just bullshit to me. Because you have this department called the Environmental Department, which has no relationship to the Strategy Department, or the overall, where the foundation of the strategy for the company actually originates. So there's always this, so I feel like I continually, the red thread here is, I don't know who I am. I know that on some level, being disruptive and disrupting myself, tearing down my armor in any way I can, creates a sort of space out of which new stuff flows in. And I don't know what to do with that always. And I can kind of keep coming, and you'll see that this thing opens up a little bit. Oddly enough, at Hampshire College, which was a very freaky place to be in 1973, I met Jeffrey Hollander, who is the CEO of Seventh Generation. And both of us had come from wealthy backgrounds. Both of us had, within our wealthy backgrounds, huge guilt. He came more from the Jewish, I came from the WASP end of it, and both of us really didn't know what to do with not environment, but with the social equity issue. That's where we both live. And ultimately, the essence of Seventh Generation has nothing at all to do with environment, as much as to do with social equity. How do you create social systems that are providing for the well-being of everybody on the planet? And we can get to that, and I can show you how that begins to take form in the company. At that point, I decided ethics was the place to go, so I did an ethics program, thought about what ethics is, and oddly enough, I spent 4 or 5 years trying to figure out, went through all the philosophers and went through religion, and it's like, well, ethics is really, it's like this thing you're deciding in every moment. You're deciding it's like, why the hell am I going to school to understand ethics? It's because I'm already doing it, and probably not very well, because but everything along the way has been screaming at me, so what is ethics? And I also, at that time, always got into these harsh debates with people who were the legal folks. Because the legal folks keep framing things in like stagnant forms. It's like, this is the way the law will be, and this is how you got to think about it, and nobody can screw with the law because it's the law. And so we're like, wow, that's not very ethical. And so it kept coming back to the question, and this was the sort of interesting part of how Jeffrey and I came back together again 6 years ago. I'm beginning to think, so how does ethics feed into seventh generation? And ultimately, the whole idea, do people know seventh generation? I don't know who knows the company, who doesn't know the company. Do people have any sense of what we do or who we are? So, I mean, do you know where the name came from? So it came from the Iroquois Indian. And it really comes from what I think is one of the deepest ethics, when you really consider it, the sense that the Iroquois, in their every deliberation, considered the impact of their decisions, every one of their decisions, 7 generations out. I mean, that's not, you can't hold that with your head. You can hold it with your heart. But you go, wow, whoa. I mean, in some sense, I mean, if you really put that on and you went shopping at Walmart, you would absolutely have a psychotic split. I mean, when you think about it, when you think, if you actually walked in and thought, what is the social and environmental ethic that this thing I'm buying actually has? It's huge. I mean, really, if you do the life cycle analysis on most of this stuff, you're going to go, holy shit. And it's interesting from that standpoint to really begin to go, so now that I know it, what do I do with it? Like, wow, I don't know what to do with that. You can't just, can't yell F you anymore because no one listens to that anymore. And the odd thing is that still in most of business, they don't yet have the frameworks that on some level can integrate what sustainability is and the business case is in one breath. And it's an interesting question. We don't do it, and we've struggled to do it on every which level. So let me stop for a second. I don't want to throw too much shit at you, but I want to play with, just right now, with how you guys, in your present frameworks, are holding sustainability. What does that mean? Anybody, everybody. But by the way, there's no right answer. So whenever we're building a field together on what this could be, and hopefully it might be revelatory to all of us, that we might get to a deeper sense of what it is we're actually beginning to play with.
It's, we were talking about it today, or some sustainable people practices. It's, holding economically, socially, environmentally, holding things equal and making sure, I hate to use the word in the definition, but that they're sustaining themselves or each other.
We brought up the frontline definition a number of times, that meeting today's needs without compromising the needs of future generations.
I guess one working definition I've sort of had in the back of my mind for a while that seems appropriate in today's economic situation is living without borrowing. You're not borrowing from the future. You're not borrowing more from nature than you can figure out. You're not borrowing or taking more of people's goodwill or taking advantage of their ability to give you things.
I'm thinking of taking it a step further and giving back more than you take. So I think that this is potential of a regenerative dimension of sustainability.
I'll build on that and say regenerating attention and energy.
Oh, that's good.
Attention meaning?
One's ability to focus. This is sustainability on a human level, individual level.
Cool.
I think in that, for me, in that regenerative sense, it forms a circle. I think of William McDonough and his cradle to grave cycle, like what we take, what we take, we give back. And that in that regeneration makes a sustainable cycle.
Okay, so the regenerative word came up really quick, so that was kind of cool. But what does it mean? I mean, you got to frame it now. I mean, it's an amazing frame. I mean, nature's got it down. I mean, that's all she does. I mean, she doesn't know the word waste, right? So, I mean, what's the framework for regenerative?
Well, output's being used as inputs. So if there's an output, then that output is then used again either by that entity or organism or process. It's either used again or it's used by another entity or organism or process to create.
Yep.
Healthy working systems are able to generate because they're not used to taking advantage of.
Okay.
I kind of have an issue with Thoreau because he's a guy who let his mother do his laundry for him. But I think he said something about if he's going to borrow his neighbor's axe, he's going to return it better than when he borrowed it. And that's what I think of regenerative. You leave it better than when you started.
All right, so let me throw one word into it, because this is the word I play with a lot. So I don't know what this word means, because that's what I'm throwing it in right now. So the word evolution. So I get where you're coming from, because the circle keeps going around and around. But consciousness evolves, hopefully. And in my sort of play right now, it's if we're going to get to this next level of design, it can't be the same around and around.
Yeah, I really believe in looking closely at life cycle design, and that a lot of our future is going to be determined by how closely we look at that and how we modify design so that anything that only the smallest part is disposed of, and the remainder of whatever it is can be used again, either in that, for the same use or in new use, evolved into a new product. Let's say, you take a chip out of a phone, a cell phone, because cell phones have evolved. Well, let's use that chip now in another piece of something instead of throwing it away, and maybe create the new chip that we need for the cell phone, but the chip that we've taken out, let's find another use for that, and maybe create another product. Maybe whole innovative green businesses will be the businesses that come along and say, how can we use all of those cell phone SIM chips or whatever they are, so that they're not disposed of.
Yeah, evolution brings into where it came from, the natural world, and an ecosystem or any system in the natural world is, in one sense, a sustainable system, but it's very much always in a state of change. Evolution, it's always evolving, and likewise, any system we design to create a sustainable society, it's got to accept that every part, or most parts, at one point or another are changing. That whole system is evolving, so that has to be written into the understanding of sustainability. It has to acknowledge the fact that what it is now is going to evolve into something will be different in the future.
Okay, no, that's good.
Which is contradictory to the word sustainability. And it's almost the time to throw the word out because it's sustainable implies a static state. A static state that we kind of determined as the right state for something.
Yeah. There's also something in here for me about allowing things to die. I feel we cling a lot, and even the concept of taking a chip and then making other products with it, I see an angle of that, but I think there's also something about maybe just letting a lot go and letting it die, and that being comfortable with change is also practicing the letting go. And I see so many businesses even that should maybe be put down a lot earlier, and keep them going, you know.
Okay, so can we play with that one for a second? Let's play with this one, because this one, this will help a little bit to get the architecture, a little bit of how to get it back to 7th Gen a little bit. So the reason I'm playing with this, and the phone thing was a good idea, and the reason I'm playing with it is that, and it was interesting because this guy that Sarah and I worked with a long time ago, he and I went to Duracell one day. It was an interesting question of like, Duracell makes what? The most inefficient product on the face of the earth. I mean, for everything they put in it, they get what, 1% out of it? And then what? It goes in the waste stream. It's totally whack. I mean, it's like a really bad idea, right? So we had this meeting before they got bought up by Gillette, and it was like Howard sat there in the midst of all of this. You could see they got into that sort of kind of a mentality thing. Most of them do. There was one woman in the gang, and all of a sudden, he said, "Hey, you guys aren't in the battery business. Where's your head?" And this was borrowing from Bucky, who was like preferred state guy. You got to be able to see the archetype before you can get to where you are now. And it was sort of interesting because then Howard, like in this moment of like guru-ishness, said, "You guys are in, you know, this portable energy idea." It's like, wow! All of a sudden, everybody, wow! That was like a change of brain. Because if you suddenly switch out of, you know, this sort of sense, we're going to make this battery more efficient, so help me God. And you back up for a moment and go, bullshit. We're not looking at the bigger system. We're not seeing portable energy. And the reason I would like to jump over to where you are, because where my head went very quickly was, why are we using phones anyway? So what the hell is going on that we have not established our capability to ESP, to in some way? I'm making this shit up a little bit, but we get so caught in the mechanistic mind. The mechanistic mind is going, God, what this looking is going, wow. And that's going to be your environmental program. And that's what a lot of people in my world, because I do the CSR, corporate responsibility, they have these strong statements like, we, in our GRIs this year, our global reporting initiatives, have decided that we have made this much toward our goal. Goal to what? To reduce. And so this was a huge, and this is why I'm weaving it back into the 7th Gen world, because I can actually take it to the ground a bit. We had this sort of like revelation, because, I mean, we're in the business of what? I mean, what are we in the business of? And that was the question. And the thing that kept coming up was, you know, Jeffrey looked over at all of us at one point and said, Jesus, we've been in the business of like doing less bad for 20 years. That's what sustainability is. We've been doing less bad. So when people go and they buy the 7th generation brand, what do they get? They get less bad. It's sort of like you step back and go, wow, that's not very cool. When you think about cool, that's not cool. And so it was sort of like, so what does it mean to then, and this is making the leap, hopefully, to actually, and I'm going to begin to give you some sense of how we are trying to build a regenerative framework. This is sort of like, you can say the word, you can say it 1,000 times, say, well, nature does it. But how does a business do it? I mean, it's really like, wow, that's a hell of a, I mean, it's like, so the question has been, and you know, I'm going to break it up and show you a little bit of how we're beginning to do this. But it is a very interesting question to make the leap out of doing less bad, and everybody applauds us for it. Oh, 7th generation is the less bad, you know, and it's got a lot of brand life on it. And so what we've dived into was on some level begin to say, so what if we are doing more good? What if you're a company that's creating more good? So what do you need? You need frameworks. You need systems frameworks. Now that's what I learned from Howard Brown from the Bucky days. The thing is that what I actually found, and I know this is again the common run into, for some reason I headed up the whole program to build our lead building. And I needed somebody who used to think like Bucky. And Howard wasn't it. And I ran into this woman who had worked into P&G and Dow and all the big nasties. She actually worked on how do you create systems thinking? How do you really understand what systems thinking is? And I actually think she's actually beyond Peter Senge in the way that she's actually perceiving what systems thinking is all about. And I'm going to show you in really quick terms what we're doing to take on the question of how do you become a company now that we're creating the business case for doing more good in the world. So it's an interesting question.
Gregor, you mentioned her name to me when we talked on the phone, but share it with everybody.
So it's Carol Stanford, and she works with Interactive And she's just like, there's a lot of trepidation bringing Carol in, because what she's done is she's basically walked in her way and said, basically the frameworks you're using right now aren't going to take us to the future. And she said it to the major management, the big dogs, which also includes women. We're trying to be the most responsible company in the world. But it also was like, wow. Wow. This is the first step in creating a regenerative economy as we see it right now. You got to bring down the hierarchy. No more white dudes in big offices. And it was really a revelation in everybody's account. So what does that mean? And the reason I'm bringing it up first, and this goes to a little bit of my history. So I have a kid who's severely autistic. And when you walk into Yale, pediatrics, and you have these, highfalutin dudes sitting there telling you the kid has a 0 IQ and he's screwed for the rest of his life, you have this sort of question like, wow, that's not a very fun thing to say to me. And the thing that's interesting about it is that what it did for me was like, in the mechanistic mind, this being has no value. It's like, wow, you just wiped this human being off the face of the earth with your frameworks. Wow, that was so quick. You could have taken a shotgun and killed him. And what it did for me, though, was again go back to trying not to think of everybody as wrong and bad, but realize that we all get to this framework that we call I am, and I am in the world. And then holding the being question, the ontological question, as an important question in how do you create a regenerative business. Some people, I know I'm not supposed to use this word in the business context, it's in a sense the ontological question is a spiritual question. I'm not saying it's a religious question, I'm saying it's a spiritual question. So, when you have 90 beings, ontological beings, in a company who have all been brought in, it's rigorous to get a job at 7th generation right now. The reason it's rigorous is because lots of people cannot tolerate the frameworks or the way that we work. It's not business as usual. And people will get in there, and because they can't keep pace with what we're doing with this changing to a systems thing, they actually build this level of contempt at the company. So you spend a lot of time triaging people's characters. They don't want to grow in the sense of let their beingness go through the stages of what we need to do to get there. And so it's been rigorous from the HR department. So how do you create a place where you're really beginning to attract people who are ready to take the blue pill versus the red pill? And I'm not trying to discriminate here as much. If you don't want to take the red pill, it's not a place for you to be. You got to take the blue pill. And it's not that anyone's going to force it down. You just have to have the courage at some level to know that change is going to be, that going to a systems thing, you're going to walk in and you're going to be disrupted. And so it's an interesting thing. So the other part of this thing, I'll tell you how we're working with it. The thing is that if your intent is to take all of the beingness in this company and help them realize their deepest capabilities, we all have potential within us that we have not tapped. Every single human being. My 0 IQ kid, I will tell you, after 15 years of analysis, I have barely touched the ground of this he was. He has a presence in this world that you'll only find if you step out of the mechanistic framework. But you got to do it. The only way I learned, I spent hundreds of thousands of dollars finding out why I'm so fucked up. And it just took having this kid to, on some level, figure out, what does it mean to actually, stand in the presence of somebody who's not a part of the mechanistic system. So the beauty of this is, and this is where I think the spiritual, and I'm also trying to bring back this word because it got locked in the closet, this is the art comes back. And that's the part of this which is amazing. And I'm telling you this because I have a certain, at this point I haven't gotten through it, antipathy towards the psychological people. They so easily, every one of us probably knows what our diagnosis is, and we repeat it every day that I'm an anal compulsive, or we go through this ritual of defining and diagnosing ourselves. And what does it do? It creates people who are more and more incapable. And what it does more and more, which I absolutely want to just slap people with, is that they keep using the N-O word. It's like, no, you can't do that. No, you can't do that. And you keep hearing the mantra of no, because it's coming out of their anal compulsive or their whatever. And so it's interesting because now we're trying to grow a company whereby the ontological question, not the psychological question, is relevant. And how is it that I am going to reach into who I am and actually make this company grow at a whole different level? How is it that my passion can actually make this company grow? So there goes the, what is your business case? I'll get to that. Because it's an interesting question. So so a couple of things. So how am I doing? Questions? I don't want to just yak. Okay. So we actually have full company DD days, developmental days, where it's not coming in. There's no training. No training. It's actually coming in and helping grow everybody to, in some way, and I'll get to what growth looks like, to actually help them to, in some ways, intuit what they can do in their world to make this a regenerative economy, business. And it's an interesting question, and there's always ways that this is taking form, and I can show you those. But it is really interesting when I'm holding in my head the woman who sits in finance, who is just doing the numbers and talking to the supply, the accountables all day long. You say, so how the hell is she going to add to this deep sense of who we are as regenerative business? And that to me becomes this whole sense of how do you grow people. So the first framework is how do you grow people. The second framework in this whole thing, and I'm just putting this out from what we're doing, we have, and I can send you guys this, 8 very strong global imperatives. Okay? We blew away this idea of a mission. Mission-based company is bullshit. It's what I'm saying it's bullshit. I'm saying from our standpoint, it was bullshit. I mean, we spent almost a year saying, well, this is our mission. This is our mission. And we said, I don't get it. And what it was it was so egoistic in it. This is our mission to save the world. Rather than, so if these are really the global imperatives, if this is what the globe needs right now, why isn't it the design of the company? And that's huge. And so the reason these are global imperatives is that they're BHAG-y in nature. People know BHAGs? No. Big, hairy, audacious goals. A month ago, Gore threw out a BHAG. No fossils by 2018. That's a BHAG. Nobody knows how the hell to do it. Okay? We don't have the framework, the consistent framework to know how to take on the preferred state, which is no fossils by 2018. Everybody squawked. The no word kept coming up. Like, no. Everyone says no. You can't do it. You can't do it. It's like, keep hearing that sense of how do you, in some ways, stop. And this is what comes up in every one of us. It also comes up in normal kind of doing business. You can't do it that way. You can't do it that way. You can't do it that way. And the mantra gets to a certain point where people walk around like mechanically. And so what we're doing is we are now creating from these global imperatives, and I can send you what they are. I mean, these are really trying to create a product line that's regenerative. So, and I'll tell you how we're taking on regenerative in a second. I mean, it's all upgrade. That's the new mantra. How do you upgrade? How do you upgrade? How do you upgrade? So what we're in the process right now is actually developing performance indices, which will have, obviously we're growing at 45%, which is obviously it's a BHAG in and of itself. And then secondly, we're trying to take on these global imperatives from the standpoint of what's the design in the performance indice that becomes a promise beyond our ableness, PBA. That's what we're doing. So nobody knows how to do it. That's the mantra. I don't know. Making the shit up.
Would you repeat the mantra for me?
Promises beyond ableness.
Thank you.
It's our way of saying BHAG, but it's really what we wanted to say is really focus on, I promise that we're going to work to make these global imperatives a reality, as we do business in the world, and that we're doing it, we don't know how we're going to get there.
That counters the no. You're trying to cut the no off at the feet.
Well, so I'm going to make this shit up, okay? I actually think that in a moment, consciousness, well, I'm going to get to this thing, I don't know, people know Otto Scharmer's work, the theory of you. So I'll do a little Otto on it. So Otto and I have another karmic relationship in my life. But the interesting thing about the experience, so Peter wrote this book, Peter Senge wrote this book called Presence. And what they are playing with is that when you let go of, what is it, criticism, cynicism, and you don't download your normal habitual thinking, you actually, and this is the spiritual part, but they can't say yes word, you actually go into the depth of where consciousness lives. And you listen.
Otto calls it the blind spot.
The blind spot.
The land of great clouds from an indigenous perspective.
I mean, it's been around for thousands of years, right? The mechanical folk, you know, bazookaed it out of existence because it doesn't follow the logic. I don't mean to be contemptuous. It's just that when there's so many no's in the world, you got to find a little humor and recognize it. Because I do, I'm mechanical. So the thing that's really interesting about it is that you got to go into and help people go into. This is where, if intuitive design is going to take form, they have to be able to test it. Every single person, not R&D, not sourcing, you know, not all the folks that are allowed to go off. It's like no more of the skunk works. That's out the door. You can't go and lock away, you know, one group of people. Nike does it. You can't go to the 4th floor. I can't remember which floor it is. Nobody's allowed on the 4th floor because that's where the good shit happens. It's sort of like, wait, man, it's like, it's good shit here too, you know? So the question is always, so how is everybody's skunk work? You know skunk works? Okay, so, was it what, Lockheed or whoever?
Xerox.
Was it Xerox? I know
Was it really?
one of the airplane folks did it too.
Yeah.
So, but basically this is where TS, top secret, nobody can go there, you design, illustrations. So, and the beauty of this is that next year everybody will have a PPBA, a personal promise beyond your own ignorance. So what we're trying to do is, I'm trying to show you how to create a framework for the future the way we're doing it now. It's totally open to your obliteration. I mean, we are road testing. But Bucky once said this, and Bucky, God bless him, was absolutely right. What is the most lost resource on the planet? Consciousness, yes. It's the most untapped. Think about it. I'll tell you one thing that's come out of this whole thing, which is like my biggest thing in working with all the folks internally. People, when they suddenly get disrupted from their old frameworks, they feel stupid. The fucking academy has made people feel stupid. I keep coming back to Shawnee. I mean, like, Shawnee doesn't feel stupid. I've got a 0 IQ, guys. I don't feel stupid. But it's amazing that that word keeps coming up. The contempt to not let the system move, which is the mechanistic mind. And I don't mean it, I sound so like I'm against the mechanistic. I'll show you why I'm not against the mechanistic in a second. But the other thing is that how quickly we all can go into, I'm stupid, without recognizing, and that was the beauty of Otto in this theory of you, which I can get to in a sec, is that when you go into the presence of shit, it starts forming in this moment. And if you can grab it, because when you come out of the presencing piece, when you come out of the you, what you begin to grab onto is the prototype. So, now I got this. How do I road test? You take from the depths, and how do you road test? How do you make it practical? How do you build a business case? I don't know. So we are arming everybody, arming and feeding and footing and heading and hearting in the war, in the company. How do you build a business case of what's taking form in you? Because in your everyday, you feel the systems we touch. And I'm going to get to, this is where I'm going to get to for the last little piece, and we'll go into the dialogue with it. So the part of us that is leaping out of this sphere of doing less bad, holding bigger frames of reference. If there's a thing here, I can show you how we're sort of doing this in really quick. So in a quick thing what we're doing, so this is the individual, this is seventh generation, this is the universe. And we want people to hold, we're working in this framework that you hold all three at once. People are not, I mean, I work at it, believe me, I am no good at it. I spend hours every day trying to, in some ways, how do you get beyond the little anxieties that way you have? You know, sit there and look 300 emails a day and go, wow, I just lost like 40,000 pieces of consciousness now. How do you keep holding these three levels of resistance so that in your every deliberation, you are focusing on what am I going to give back? Give back. Who said give back? To you, give back to the universe. That's what the personal and the community called seventh generation is working to say. So how do you do it? How do you do it? I don't know. Making shit up. So how we're doing it, and this is where we're beginning to look at this, and this goes in what we're calling the value-adding process. I basically think McDonough lost it. He's not the guy to go to if you're going to stick in the same old rule. Bucky wouldn't have tolerated that either. It's earth to earth. How do you put into motion earth to earth? So whatever you take out of the earth, you put back in the earth. But we're adding a PBA to this, that when you put it back in the earth, it has to be better than when we took it out, the rock. How do you do that? I don't know.
How does nuclear waste fit into that?
That's the question.
How do you know if better is better?
That's a great question. So I can help with that. So this is how I'm playing with that. It's a great question. To me, it has two little spokes at it right now. It's the social and it's the environmental. So right now, we are not doing something very good. We are still taking palm trees from unfair traded areas for our surfactants in our detergents. We do not know the people, we do not know the social systems that we are touching. We do not know that it's not being farmed well. It's not giving back to the earth. That's not cool. So we are in a massive program right now to bring sustainable, or whatever you want to call it, really thinking about how do we, right now, because it could be that palm oil is not the thing to do. It could be that we can find other things to do that, because the surfactant, you need that chemical to make the detergent work. And palm oil and coconut oil, that's what we do. So if we are considering in our every deliberation right now in this present state, palm oil as being a part of our whatever, we need to know that we are putting things back into the earth, the organic idea, or I would step it even further, biodynamic farming, which I think is much better than just organic farming. And that we are in any way we can touching the communities that